In today's show, the Blazers are making moves. Trendon Watford's here to stay. The Blazers take a flyer on a big man, and they add a guard to their two-way spot. Joe Cronin is crafting this roster in his image. We're starting to get a sense of what Cronin values and what his vision is moving forward. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Blazers your first listen every day. It's free on all platforms, 5 days a week, your only daily Trailblazers podcast coming at you every single weekday. So make it part of your daily routine, make it your first listen, and tell your friends to do the same. In today's show, the Blazers had a heavy transactional Monday. This is Tuesday, February 22nd show. Happy 2-2-2-2-2 day. But the Blazers on Monday made a whole bunch of deals. They signed Trendon Watford to a multi-year contract. They added Drew Eubanks, big man out of Portland's own big man out of, to a 10-day deal. And then they added Brandon Williams to the vacated two-way spot. So we're going to talk about today's show, the newcomers. The Blazers hooked it up. 3 newcomers. We got 3 segments. You can guess how we're going to do it. Let's start at the top with Trendon Watford. Congrats to my man. Longtime listeners will know that I'm a Trendon Watford believer, and today Trendon Watford got a raise and a little bit of security, and that can be read as nothing but a good thing for Trendon in the near term. I am truly happy for him. I didn't think Trendon Watford was going to play this year, and now he's signing a multi-year, $5+ million contract if he plays all of it out. More on that in a moment, but cool. I will celebrate someone getting a raise, getting job security. I am really, really happy for Trendon Watford. I didn't know much about him, didn't see him play in college, and I watched him play a couple summer league games for the Blazers. I said, okay, I guess he dribbles a little bit for a big guy, but I wasn't, I thought this dude's not going to play. The Blazers are going to be good. This dude's not going to play. Then when he first made his NBA debut, the Blazers had some big men in foul trouble, and Chauncey Billups leans down the bench and calls on, two-way big man Trendon Watford to play backup center for a few minutes in the first half of the game. And I was like, what is this? What is this? But I quickly turned from being like, why Trendon Watford to being a Watford believer. At his size, he can handle, he can pass, and he just has a great feel. He really, really knows where to be on defense. He has a great, great sense of how the Blazers want to defend, whatever they're in zone, in man. He has a really good sense. And on offense, well, he's really limited. He can't shoot. All of his game is 12-foot floaters and in. He just has a really good feel. He times his rolls to the rim well. He kind of knows where to get into space and then make passes once he's in the space and has a little bit of an advantage. He just has a great feel. And if you listen to yesterday's show, I even ruminated on what is Watford's future? Because I said, this guy's good, and it's probably deserves to have a shot in the NBA, but is that shot with the Trailblazers? Straight up, I don't know. That was my question, is I do not know, because he doesn't project as a starter for next season. He's a back half of the rotation guy. He's your 4th or 5th big. Maybe he's almost certainly a 4. He can play, obviously he can play some small ball 5, but he's a 4 who can't shoot. But he has this great feel, and he's developed he's developed really well. He clearly has some NBA abilities. So I knew that he would get a shot. I just didn't know if the shot would be here, because what do the Blazers want to do? And then you wake up in the morning and, shortly before lunch or whatever, there it is. Trendon Watford, question answered, Mr. Richmond. Trendon Watford, part of the plan as the Blazers signed him, converted his contract from a 2-way contract to an NBA contract. By doing that, they had to waive someone. They waived Dennis Smith Jr. Bummer. It's, he's injured. I don't think I mentioned this on the podcast, and I apologize for that. Dennis Smith Jr. has elbow injury that he injured in practice, and he's probably going to be out for at least another month, and if not a little bit longer. And the Blazers, a minimum guy with heading into free agency, he was the choice. It was between him and Ben McLemore, and McLemore plays and is healthy. It was going to be Dennis Smith Jr. It's a bummer, just a bummer of how NBA transactions work. But to make this room on the roster, they had to waive Dennis Smith Jr. Fun off-season signing. sad to see him go, quite frankly, but that's the breaks we push forward. And I apologize to your listeners for not having that Dennis Smith Jr. news last week. That one's on me. We had too many Law Murray interviews and some other extracurriculars that we were doing during All-Star break. But Dennis Smith Jr. is gone. Trendon Watford's here. They convert his contract to an NBA contract, and so he gets a raise immediately this season. And the first year of the 4-year deal is this season. So you convert and extend. You can't extend someone on a 1-year contract. Blah blah blah. So he will have a guaranteed contract for next season. Trendon Watford, part of the plan for the 2022-2023 season. Congrats to my boy. But then he has 2 non-guaranteed years after that. So while I love this for Trendon, I love that he gets the money now. Like, I love that he gets a raise now. He deserves a raise. He was certainly outplaying a 2-way deal all season long. He, from the moment he got an opportunity, he immediately outplayed his contract. If you're a contributor and you're playing as a 2-way guy, you deserve more money, always. But now not only he gets this a little bit of money, he gets security, right? He gets to play next season and be part of the plan and have guaranteed money for next season. This is, going from making hundreds of thousands of dollars to adding another comma to that. That is a lifestyle changing day. Huge. And I'm excited for Trendon Watford to go from undrafted to now part of the plan. But I don't love the contract. I don't. I think these are predatory team contracts that have very, very little upside after, say, Christmas Day for Trendon Watford. This coming Christmas basically has very little upside. If he's good, he's severely underpaid and he's under team control for 2 more years. I called these are hinky deals made famous by former Philadelphia 76ers executive Sam Hinkie, who, when he was with those process Sixers, the Sixers kind of churning through second rounders and undrafted guys trying to find gems, he was signing players to these sort of light guarantee, very team forward contracts. And basically it's, Trendon Watford gets his money. He gets a big raise this year. Awesome. He gets the security next year. Awesome. He'd probably make right around league minimum, probably a shade above it, maybe a shade below it. But then the next year, like he'll probably be making less money than he would just straight up as a 3rd-year minimum guy. 4th year, same thing. Like, you're either capping him right at the minimum or something below it. The only reason the Blazers would pick up his contract is if he outplays it. There's no reason if he's like worse than the minimum or borderline, they're just not going to pick him up, right? They're just going to let him go. But if he's good and he deserves to be on the roster, he's going to be deeply underpaid. No upside for Trendon Watford. These are predatory deals made famous by Sam Hinkie, who was really just churning out players as assets in the truest sense. And there's, like I said, it's really good for Trendon today. Really, really legitimately happy for him today and rooting for him. I just can't get excited about, like I said, after Christmas Day, when he's entering, he'll either be a free agent and be on his own, or outplay, be better than what the money he's owed and get picked up and be underpaid. And then the Blazers have all the control. He has none. I don't love the Hinkie deals. I do not love them. I don't like them. I don't like them, but I'm happy for Trendon in the near term. It's cool. Like it's cool to see a guy go from undrafted. Jason Quick wrote a great profile of him, and Trendon Watford's crying in his brother's arms on draft night because he thought his dreams were going to come true. Well, guess what, Trendon? February 21st, 2022, your dreams came true. You're an NBA player. You got an NBA contract. You're making NBA money. And maybe your NBA money is going to be a little limited by something dreamed up by Sam Hinkie, but for now, you're part of the plan. That's cool as heck. It's cool as heck for a guy like Trendon Watford. So, maybe you heard me say I'm a Trendon Watford believer so many times on this podcast. I'm still a believer. I'm happy for Trendon. I truly am. And I hope, I hope in year 3 you're underpaid, Trendon. I really do. That's not the only move the Blazers made, though. They added Drew Eubanks, a local kid joining the Trailblazers. A fun story. And for about 10 days, at least 10 days here, the Blazers will have someone who's straight up out of Troutdale, from the area, playing on the roster, or at least suiting up most nights. Let's talk about Drew Eubanks, a new Blazer, in the second segment. But before we do that, let me tell you about betonline.net, the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your sports action. That's all it is. It's just the easiest way to find odds and props and game lines on every single sport. The Olympics are done and the NFL's done, but pro and college hoops, hockey, tennis tournaments, soccer all over the world, the combat sports like boxing and MMA, whatever you want, you're going to find action. You can even play your favorite Vegas casino games at betonline.net. It's a ton of fun. So go take advantage of this opportunity right now. That's Bet Online, where the game starts. All right. Let's keep it rolling here on Locked On Blazers. We talked Trendon Watford. I'm happy for him. I don't love the structure of the contract, but I'm happy for Trendon Watford. A guy who deserved it got his money. The Blazers gave a little bit of money to a local kid today. Drew Eubanks, a big man who came up with the San Antonio Spurs, signed a 10-day contract with the Trailblazers. I don't think he's signed it, actually. Let me rephrase that. He will sign a 10-day contract with the Blazers. The Blazers come back out of the All-Star break on Thursday and play the Golden State Warriors. I would assume Drew Eubanks signs his contract Wednesday evening that begins Thursday morning, because you're not going to waste a couple days on the All-Star break. So Drew Eubanks will sign a contract, but first reported by Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN. The team hasn't announced it yet. It's not official. So credit to Woj for breaking this one. But Drew Eubanks, 6'9", I would have called him 6'10", but I looked up what he's listed at on Basketball Reference. 6'9". He's a center to me. Like he's a center, smaller center, but he's a bouncy, sturdy center. I think he's a good screen setter and a good, pretty decent rim roller. No range, but an inside kind of bruising type with a little bit of bounce to his game. Who came up with the Spurs? He went to Reynolds High School in Troutdale. If you're not local, Troutdale is just like east of Portland. This is close. Like Troutdale is 15 minutes from my house. Reynolds High School, go Raiders. Shout out to the Reynolds Raiders. Shout out to the Mount Hood Conference. I used to cover high school sports in this fine town, so it might not be the Mount Hood Conference anymore, but it was back in the day. It certainly was when Drew Eubanks was at Reynolds High School as a standout in Oregon. From Reynolds, he went to Oregon State. Like the dude's been hooping in Oregon for a long time. Pretty good player out of Oregon State. Went undrafted and then ended up signing a two-way contract with the San Antonio Spurs in 2018. Spent the first 2 years of his career playing a little bit for the Spurs on those two-way deals, and then graduated from the two-way. They signed him to a multi-year deal, not too dissimilar from the deal that Trendon Watford signed. The Hinkies, baby. And that meant that when Drew Eubanks at the trade deadline was traded to the Toronto Raptors, his contract, he was waived because his contract for next season is fully non-guaranteed. The Raptors had no risk. That's the breaks. And so Eubanks signs with the Blazers for 10 days. The Blazers don't have a roster spot. As I mentioned, they had to waive Dennis Smith Jr. because they've got 15 NBA contracts on the roster. But Damian Lillard's hurt, Nazir Little's hurt, Didi Louzada's hurt, Joe Ingles is hurt. Because 4 players are expected to miss a significant amount of time or extended period of time. Didi Louzada is the player. If you don't know that name, he came over in the New Orleans trade along with Josh Hart, and he has a torn meniscus that he tore at the end of January. I haven't even seen him around the arena. I don't know that when he was first traded to the Blazers, he was in the health and safety protocols. I believe I know he's out of the health and safety protocols now, but he's still dealing with a torn meniscus in his left knee. So he's out for a little while, but you know the other guys, Damian Lillard and Nazir Little, you're familiar with. Joe Ingles obviously came over in that Utah Jazz trade. So because they have 4 players out, they have a hardship exception, which means they can sign guys to 10-day deals to kind of just fill out the back half of the roster. They have 14 players, but 4 of them are hurt. You're allowed to sign guys you can't sign them for the end of the season unless you get a injury exception, but you can sign these temporary 10-day deals. Drew Eubanks will be eligible to sign two 10-day deals with the Blazers. Again, his will begin on Thursday, almost certainly on Thursday. So I think this, I don't have big Eubanks takes. My big Eubanks takes is that the Blazers desperately need help up front. They just don't have any tall people on the roster. They have one guy who's listed above 6'8" on the roster, and that's Yusuf Nurkic. Trendon Watford is an okay backup 5, but there are plenty of nights when the other teams just has more size and Watford is not a good fit. And then if Watford's in foul trouble, or just like needs a breather and there's still size in the game and the Blazers haven't gone back to Nurk. They've been leaning on some combination of like Justice Winslow and Greg Brown as your big guys up front, and Greg Brown playing center is not a viable solution. So if nothing else, this addresses a specific need for the Blazers. This is, Drew Eubanks he's probably not going to be a long-term contributor to the Blazers, but I think it's cool as hell that a local kid is getting to play for his hometown team. Pretty rare in the league, certainly rare in a place like Portland that doesn't churn out a ton of NBA quality NBA caliber players. Shout out to Salim Stoudemire and the Tarver brothers and my man Steve Jones and Kevin Love. We'll give Kevin Love a little bit of credit, but like, there's just not that many dudes in the league. The Terrences, shout out to Terrence Ross and Terrence Jones. Like there just aren't a lot of dudes who are, NBA caliber players from the area. Drew Eubanks is one of them. And he's playing. He's going to wear a jersey probably on Thursday. Almost certainly going to wear a jersey on Thursday. That's cool as hell. Like same way I feel about the Trendon contract. Like that's cool. These are good things. And if nothing else, I like that Joe Cronin is addressing a need. This is, obviously some of this is financially motivated. The Blazers are far enough away from the luxury tax that they can afford to do this. They're not in danger of bumping up against it. And ownership just frankly isn't right motivated to stay out of the tax for obvious financial reasons. So like, I'm not going to say like Cronin's doing something that Olshey never would, because a lot of times Olshey didn't have this sort of flexibility to do this. At the end of the season, though, when contracts are prorated and all these things, this is the time that you can kind of add spare parts. And if you have wiggle room financially, you can take a flyer on Eubanks. If he plays well, he'll get a second 10-day. He might just get a second 10-day period because you might as well see him for the full 20 days and find out what the deal is. But I hope we get to see him play. There were times, not this season, quite frankly, I don't think I saw him on the court for the Spurs this season, but last year, where I thought Drew Eubanks was probably an NBA player, like a low-level backup center. I was drinking the Kool-Aid. I don't, clearly he wasn't part of the Spurs plan, and they've got some other parts that can fill in those spots. But I don't think he's going to be totally out of his depth. I think if you need him to be a backup center, or what he might be on this roster, a third center, I think Eubanks is worth a flyer. And if he pops and they want to, bring him in, they can move some stuff around, waive Ben McLemore and make it happen. It's as simple as that. Eubanks is, if nothing else, it'll be fun to have him on the roster and a chance to be, a decent contributor as a backup. Let's close the show talking about the other Blazers addition. They signed a two-way guard, Brandon Williams. Welcome back, Brandon Williams, who was on the team very briefly in December. This is good news because it shows Joe Cronin taking two-way spots seriously. Let's get to know Brandon Williams a little bit to close out the show. But before we do that, let's talk about Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar on the market. That's what they're doing. They're not messing around. I've been eating Built Bars for a long time. Maybe 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, Built Bar became a regular sponsor of the network. And what they did was they sent us some protein bars, because that's what good sponsors do. They say, try our product and you can tell people how much you love it. Well, I did try their product and I did love it. And now I spend my own money buying Built Bars. I think you will too. Check out the rotating cast of flavors. They got new flavors all the time and some staples in there that are a ton of fun. My personal favorites are peanut butter brownie and cookies and cream, but all of them pack a punch. 17 grams of protein, 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs. That's your typical Built Bar. And they come, like I said, they come in a whole bunch of flavors. So no matter what you like, they're packed full of useful macros, and they're delicious too. All tasty, all healthy. Go get yourself some. Go to built.com and use that promo code LOCKED15. Get 15% off your next order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond. You are still listening to Locked On Blazers, and the Blazers are still making moves. Signing Trendon Watford to a multi-year contract, adding Drew Eubanks, local kid straight out of Troutdale, to a 10-day deal. Troutdale, stand up. If I got listeners from Troutdale, or if you are a Reynolds High alum, shoot me a note, lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com. I'll give you a shout out, because we're putting on for Reynolds coming out of the All-Star break. But that's not the only move the Blazers did, because they converted Trendon Watford's two-way deal to an NBA contract, and they waived Dennis Smith Jr. They had an empty two-way spot, and Joe Cronin had a plan, adding 22-year-old point guard Brandon Williams to the roster, the 6'2" guard out of Arizona. You might be familiar with him because he had signed a 10-day contract with the Blazers right after Christmas during the COVID fiasco of late 2021, when every team was adding 10-day guys. Brandon Williams played for the Blazers twice, scored 4 total points. He was not memorable to me. He was not the guy that of the 10-day guys, I liked Reggie Perry the most. I also knew Reggie Perry the most. I kind of liked Reggie Perry when he was a Brooklyn Nets. I kind of liked Reggie Perry when he played 8 solid minutes for the Blazers, but he doesn't have the upside. He's not a 22-year-old. And quite frankly, the Blazers could, by waiving Dennis Smith Jr., the Blazers could use some depth at point guard. So this fills a need, because if they're not going to play Eric Bledsoe, which it doesn't look like they're going to, we'll see coming out of the break if they do, but it kind of seems like the Blazers are just going to hold Bledsoe out. He's injured. He's on the injury report, but he was not on the Clippers injury report for the first 54 games of the season. Shows up in Portland, and now all of a sudden he's like too injured to play for 10 days. It is what it is. It's kind of the business of the league, but if they're not going to play Bledsoe, and maybe there's no real reason to play a veteran point guard for where the Blazers are at and their situation, Brandon Williams might play. Like, he might get some backup minutes. I don't anticipate that he will right away. They're giving those backup point guard minutes to Josh Hart. I think there's some real value in letting Josh Hart just like straight up play point guard and continue to develop as a playmaker and a ball handler, and like some secondary skills that are really valuable for him as he continues to find his way with the Blazers. But Brandon Williams is, he's a guy who he could, if you need him, he's a point guard. He plays a position of need. And at 22 with very limited NBA experience, this is, an upside play with literally zero risk. It's, if he pops, he pops. If he doesn't work, it's a two-way guy. You keep him in your system. You invite him to summer league. You figure out what you want to do. You maybe invite him to training camp, and you've had him and you're building a bunch. You get familiar with what he brings to the table. And if he doesn't work out, he's just not a part of the plan. You don't invite him to summer league. He doesn't come to training camp. You move on and you fill those two-way spots. I will say this. I like that Joe Cronin is taking the two-way spot seriously. One of the things I didn't particularly like about Neil Olshey, and the list is relatively long, but I don't think he took the two-way spots very seriously. I know that Kelvin Blevins is Damian Lillard's cousin, and I know that Damian Lillard is the most powerful person in the organization. I would argue more powerful, maybe the ownership, but certainly up there. But Blevins is not an NBA player and was like a backup in the G League before signing with the Blazers. I would like for the future of the franchise to I think it'd be better for the future of the franchise to take two-way contracts more seriously, get a G League team, take the sort of hold like NBA development model a little more seriously. Not that the Blazers haven't developed players, not that they haven't drafted well, not that they haven't found young guys that help. Neil Olshey did that. The whole team did that under the previous coaching staff was really good at it under the Neil Olshey regime. Stotts Olshey was great. The Blazers seem with Cronin and, Olshey's picks, but Cronin and Chauncey Billups, they seem to be doing well again, developing young players and getting, some out of them towards the end of the season. So it's not like they haven't done that well. It's just, I wish they would be more serious and more into taking advantage of the two-way spots, because they're places where you can find guys like Trendon Watford who can help you win games and then be part of the future plan. So I'm glad to see that the Blazers, as soon as they did not wait, as soon as they had a vacant spot in the two-way, on their one of their two-way contracts available to them, they immediately added someone. They added someone that they were interested in December. This is like a team with a clear plan. This feels, who knows if it'll work, but it feels like this is more responsible and sort of more, what I would like to see them do in terms of how to treat those spots. Those are developmental spots. So use them for guys that can be developed. And I don't know, hire Keldon Blevins in some other capacity. You can have it all, I promise. This leaves the Blazers now back with a full roster. 15 NBA contracts on the roster. That's a full group. 2 two-way contracts, 17 total. That's a full group. No limit on how many games a two-way player can play. So it's not like you're going to run out of eligibility with Brandon Williams or anything like that. He's going to play. Now the Blazers have only a handful of guys, though, guaranteed for next season. Damian Lillard, Nazir Little, Justice Winslow, now Trendon Watford, congratulations. Greg Brown III, Keon Johnson, Didi Louzada, and a partially guaranteed contract to Eric Bledsoe. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guaranteed spots out of 12 for next season. Well, 15 for next season. It's basically half an NBA roster, a lot of young developmental players there. And now Trendon Watford is part of that group. It's like Dame and some youngsters. Obviously, Josh Hart has a contract that the Blazers can pick up. There's a team option where you just add him to the mix. Anthony Simons is going to be in the mix. He's a restricted free agent the Blazers can bring back. Yusuf Nurkic is going to be back. Like, it's going to grow. Certainly, I think Ant and Nurk are locks. Hart is almost certainly a lock, but we'll see. He could be traded. Quite frankly, that's why he wouldn't be on the roster, is because he gets traded. But I think we're starting to see what next year's team looks like. And at least the back half of the rotation is a bunch of young developmental parts. It's now incumbent on Cronin to figure out, to see what he sees in this group over the next 20 games, to figure out what they do if they end up with 2 lottery picks, which they very well may. They're owed one by the New Orleans Pelicans if it falls between 5 and 14 in this draft, and they can get their own. They keep their own. If they miss the playoffs this season, they might end up with 2 draft picks, something like 6 and 9 or 8 and 9 in the draft, like two top 10 draft picks, a bunch of other young cheap parts on the roster around Dame, a chance to bring back Ant and Nurk. Like, we're starting to see this thing take shape, but you've got to go from a bunch of developmental parts to, competitive vets, or kind of commit to being young and developing. And I think these final 20 games will kind of figure out where the Blazers are. We're starting to see it take shape. I think we're starting to see kind of Cronin put his stamp on this thing. Obviously, he was part of the previous regime. Like, he's part of the previous front office. Some of these players might be big, big people that Cronin was a big proponent of. So it's hard to differentiate Neil's guys and Joe's guys at this point. But we're starting to see, as Cronin gets more time on the job and more opportunity to shape this thing, we're getting to see what Joe's guys look like. And so far, it's Trendon Watford and some low risk flyers. The Blazers at some point have to shift off low risk flyers, but for now, that's what they've, it's kind of where they need to be now. There's no reason you don't make big moves until you move on into the summertime, but the next 20 games will inform what those moves might be. And it'll start with what, Trendon Watford brings and how the other pieces fit. So should be, pretty fascinating as we get back to see kind of what this team looks like. They might screw around and end up in the play-in tournament despite, all of these young developmental parts and maybe not a huge commitment to winning. And I think if you're good by accident and then you can add some talent to that good by accident roster, you might be headed in a positive direction. We'll see. Who will take you along the journey is Locked On Blazers. Free on all platforms, 5 days a week. Tell your friends about this podcast. Tell them it's also available on YouTube. Just search Locked On Blazers. We will be there right where you're looking for us. Appreciate you listening. Talk to you soon.